Logo. Sorry, we have been late, but we are doing great. So I'm very happy. My name is Sylvain Racco. I'm the director of the French Institute of Research in Africa, and I've been offered the opportunity to have a session, and we felt it would be interesting to bring in that session not a boring academic talk and so on and so forth, but very much a live roundtable. So we felt the topic of that roundtable would fit the current context in Kenya, which is the youth dynamics, youth issues, youth and political evolution. So the title of this roundtable is Youth and Political Evolution in Kenya Toward a Social Class. I'm going to be very fast on the introduction, but I feel very much happy. Just a few words about my background, just for you to understand how we draft the topic, looking at this youth generation. I said I'm the director of IFRA, but I am also the drummer of Céline Dion, but not the fake one, the real band, which is not very much known. And I'm saying this because there will be some linkages between with the question I will address. And I've also been involved in trade union, a very small trade union, but very noisy. So I really feel comfortable when I hear this kind of songs and people with a fist like this. So we'll try to orient to design that roundtable in terms of having a fruitful discussion with 5 different people from different angles. So please, I'm calling now the 5 panelists. Maybe I start with Marie-Emmanuelle Pomerol. She's a professor in political science from the University of Paris. It's free, my friend. And she has done extensive research on, let's say, activism, the role of the state in Cameroon, Kenya, but she may present herself briefly later. May I call Mino Kia? She was around, please. Mino, karibu sana from Mukuru Social Justice Center. You'll get the opportunity to introduce yourself. May I call Cynthia from Millennium Digital, please, karibu sana. Then our dear comrade Mwangela Monaja, he's an artist activism and Ora Africa fellow, and Geoffrey Lugano, our colleague from the Rift Valley Institute. Yes, please, karibu sana. Karibu sana. Oh, maybe we need more seat. So we have been told we have less time. We have only 1 hour, and we'll try to keep that time. While he's getting a seat, we plan to have five subtopics. First, it's about, we are professors, so it's about definitions. What are we talking about when we are talking about youth and Gen Z? Is it the same thing? We're going to listen from them. The second question is about order and disorder. Okay. The third topic is about the link between youth, the way they are organized, and anarchy. I will introduce the question. Don't worry. The fourth one is about the old claims. Are there old claims in a new context? What's new? And the last one would be around integrity and legacy of this movement, right? So I would like to please to give you the opportunity to present yourself very briefly to everybody, okay, before we start to the first question.
Okay. Thank you, Sylvain. So I'm Marie-Emmanuelle Pomerol. I'm an academic, so I'm the boring one in the room. I've been the director of, I've been his boss before. I've been working since more than 20 years on mobilization activism in Africa. I've done some internship in the Kenya Human Rights Commission 27 years ago. So I'm very happy to be here and to see that the civil society is still really energetic in Kenya.
Aye. Yeah, my name is Monaja, that's my artistic name, but I am Mongela Kamenchu, that's my name on my ID. I am an artist. I'm passionate about making songs that speak to the context that we are in. I actually have an album called June 25th. You can check it out online. And I also happen to be a reluctant academic. So that's about it.
Viva comrades, viva. Viva. More power to the people, more power. More power. My name is Minocha. I am a community organizer from Mukuru Community Justice Center, but I am also an artist working with the Social Justice Center's Traveling Theatre. It is a group that is using theatre and other types of performing arts to advocate for social justice. Yes, professionally I'm supposed to be a banker, but this country.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia Wangui. I am a creative content writer. I write content for specifically young millennials and Gen Z. So I consider myself a creative, and I'm also an aspiring creative nonfiction writer for novels. And on behalf of the Millennium Digital, I am very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Geoffrey Lugano. I wear two hats. I'm an academic, and I also manage an education and training program at the Rift Valley Institute that is hosted by the BIA. We are neighboring the IFRA Institute, and I'm here to talk about youth issues because I also feel youthful. Thank you so much.
You may clap for them, maybe. Thank you. Thank you, very interesting panelists. So now the first question. So because we have less time compared to what was planned, I would suggest, because we'd like to go through the 5 questions. So if someone does not feel comfortable with a specific question, you don't have to address that question. Is that okay? In order to save time, okay? So the first question is about definition. How do you define youth? How do you define Gen Z? And is it the same thing? What unites youth and Gen Z? Please, who would like to address that question? Yes?
I think I can. So first of all, in addressing that question, how many of us in the crowd consider themselves as youth? 1. How many are youth? I can see so many hands. How many are Gen Zs? Quite a handful. So for me, yeah, that gets it. It's a feeling. When we say I'm a youth, I think I remember there was a clip going around when, how many of us are active on TikTok? When Balamwezi was saying, when he was being questioned, when he went to the streets, and he said, in a very funny tone, Nana mesema mimi si Gen Z. Mimi ni Gen Z. And it was quite, if you look at the face, he looked so old. And I also remember there's another correlation with this idea of being a youth at heart, when Oburu Odinga has always been ridiculed. Oburu is the brother to Raila Odinga, older brother. If Raila is 80, imagine how old Oburu is. Probably 85, and he looks really old and tired. But people from Sierra County normally say, this is our youth leader, an orphan who also needs to be helped. So for me, I think the idea of youthfulness is a feeling. You can feel youthful at heart. It depends on how you consider yourself. Do you still have the vitality that comes with youthfulness? Do you still have that energy? And this speaks to the idea that the idea of youthfulness is kind of an inclusive concept, because if you think of youthfulness as being a situationship, a kind of condition where you are, regardless of your age, it defies all the norms and conventions of defining youth. Because if you look at the UN definition of youth, it begins from the range of around 13 years to 24 years. So taking that formal demarcation, it kind of limits how many of us can think of themselves as youth, such that if there is a clarion call for the youth to go to the streets and chant one term, not so many of us will go, because, like myself, I'm almost 40. But if we say youthfulness is a feeling, being at heart, that all of us are included, such that even the likes of Oburu Odinga, who are 80, and the likes of many of you can actually claim that youthfulness. So we think in its broadest sense, it is kind of a very inclusive terminology, how Kenyans use this. And Kenyans conflate Gen Zs and the youth because there's no clear demarcation. So a Kenyan who feels youthful at heart kind of thinks of themselves as Gen Z. So when you see the revolution, the Gen Z revolution actually out there, it's not people who are actually born between 1997 onwards, as the official figures kind of suggest. Gen Z is kind of a moment of awakening of the youth, of political consciousness amongst those who feel of themselves as still youthful, the people who are still useful at heart. So it's a very, very fluid term that kind of includes so many people. Yeah.
I think I would add very briefly to what he said. I think I won't talk about youth, but G and Z, because in Kenya almost everyone is a youth. But now G and Z, I think G and Z is a generation that has discovered its mission and is here to fulfill its mission. You can be, because, for example, me, I'm not a Gen Z, I'm a millennial buana. So you cannot tell me that I'm not going to the streets and I will be recognized when this history of this country is being told, that I was in the streets fighting for. So I think basically it is a generation that knows its mission and it is willing to achieve it. It doesn't matter how old you are. I really don't think it matters how old you are. Yeah, it's a matter of heart.
I think this Gen Z identity is really meaningful for different reasons. First, it resonates globally because there are Gen Z everywhere, but also it resonates locally because I think in East Africa you have a lot of age groups society. And there is this idea, the notion that younger generation have to take power, like the Mau Mau. As youth, they thought that they would take power at what time. I remember, I think the Mungiki, they had this same kind of speech saying it's time for us to go and be in power. So it looks like the Gen Z, that's their time to take power. So it's really anchored into East African societies.
You can still give me the mic, I can speak like a politician. So, Gen Z, Gen Zote, you know, I think there's also a tendency of the political class to kind of pigeonhole it as Gen Z, the children, and they use it like, they say, our children, as if you say you are our children, then you can also discipline us. You see, like you say, our children, please listen to us. You know, it's like we can discipline you. Kenya is one big family, and you people in the streets, we are going to discipline you. There's a kind of politics of civility and respect. Respect us with the older generation. And even an archbishop said this some weeks back. I think my community, I come from the Meru, we had certain stages in life. When you are initiated, you either become a Modaka or a Ngutu. And then when you get married, you become a Mokoro, a Moekoro. And now you become the fathers of the land, the mothers of the land. Now you have moved from that youthful stage. So in as much as there's a feeling which Lugano has talked about, there are also certain stages that might make you not associate with that tag and say, wait, the networks, out of the networks that I've built in this capitalist society, out of the age itself that I have, I don't have as much energy as someone who's 18, 17, 21. There are those firm issues that would say, this is a person who's significantly older, this is a person who's significantly younger. And now it just boils down to why we are using these titles. Remember in 2013, Uhuru and Ruto presented themselves as youthful leaders, wearing matching red ties. I don't know whether their record in office went with their youthfulness, but because they was presented as vijana wa kuchapa kazi. Now it's your opinion to determine whether walichapa kazi. But sometimes these phrases are bandied about with some sort of political purpose, to present people as either approachable to the youth, or in the present case, to present younger people as defiant and people who are not respecting authority.
Just to add a little on Gen Z, When Gen Z became more popular, when in protest in June 2024, and the people came to realize there's a big difference with this protest. You'll find that Gen Z are very linked with the social media. They love social media. They know that information is very much it's accessible on social media. So when they went to protest, it was they are live on TikTok protesting, and then you would see that information would spread very massively, and then the whole protest was just planned because young people were talking about the taxes that the government was putting, and this is how the Gen Z came up to be at the forefront of this protest. So it is the aspect of social media and the fact that Gen Z grew up in the digital age. Most of them did not grow up in the Shamba. Most of them grew up watching Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. So most of them, you see, they actually effects of globalization. You can see them, they have a real effect on them. They are very vocal to global issues that are happening. Every other thing, the Gen Z are very aware. Yeah.
Thank you. So you're very good, because you have very brief answer, very sharp answer. So we are much happy. Please keep going on that way. So now we address the second question. The second topic I sent because I've been brief with only the topic, not the question. It was about order and disorder. Okay, about order and disorder, and I see links with the punk movement, in the late 70s, 80s in Europe. The youth was against the established order, mostly, no job, no economic horizon. How can I make my life? The parents are boring, whatever. This kind of, social position about the established order against the elder. So can we say that the Gen Z, they are punks? First, and second, can we say we have intergenerational conflicts in Kenya? Please. Tension. Disagreement.
So I think if you look at the punk movement of the 1970s, it was happening at the time when not so much was happening in Kenya in terms of political awakening. We just came from independence in 1963. So that was following a history of being marginalized, at least politically. So the kind of political awakening the consciousness wasn't really as much as it is now, because increasingly the Kenyan public and the youth and the Gen Zs, not Gunzis, I think the Gunzis also exist. Those were opposed to Gen Zs, the kind of criminal gangs that were hired by the state to counter the Gen Z movement. So I think the consciousness in the current era is much a continuation of that silencing of a generation. So increasingly, given the new tools, communication tools like Twitter, online access to digital platforms, to news, and also the Constitution framework, 2010 Constitution is really a powerful tool that has really increased the political capacity Kenyan youth to really question power and authority. So the 70s, not so much I think was happening because of our history of colonialism and being suppressed politically, but increasingly it has become much easier for the youth to actually politically hold the lead to account. That's what I could say.
Thank you. Who else? Yeah, just go on.
Okay, I think there'll always be tension between generations, but I think the problem with kind of framing it as generational defiance is that it misses a number of legitimate issues. So you have people who are in their maybe late 20s, 30s, late 30s even, who have failed to transition, who want to start families. But if you look 30 years back, the conditions then, when those who are in power right now are at a youthful age, the times were easy as far as getting by. The living standards, the cost of living wasn't as crazy as it is right now. So when someone frames youth and say, okay, you guys are being defiant, you're disorderly, you're entitled brats, as university students would be told even in the 60s by the then government, it kind of dismisses and delegitimizes some of the questions that they have. You guys know the so-called new funding model of university education that will make families pay more. Of course, it has been challenged in court, but it was a legitimate issue last year. But if one would frame that as, oh, these are just young people being defiant, it delegitimizes, it takes away the legitimacy of some of the legitimate grievances that significantly younger people have. But as far as order and disorder and anarchy, I think that is still the same narrative of you young people do not know what you want, you're a disorderly bunch, you're rebels without a cause, and it just goes down to kind of making light of their problems.
Thank you.
I think what I would say is Gen Z's, I think it is an issue of framing, just to add on what my colleague has said, that it once, when the nation sends goons, when the state had sent goons, as my colleague has called them Gen Goons, it is so that to frame the Gen Z movement to look disorderly and just make it seem that it is not for the better of this country, and to maybe silence them and bring a point of fear towards going for the protest. But I would not say it is Gen Zs are punks, because it is a matter of it is a national problem. It is not just the Gen Zs. It is just because the Gen Zs are the frontiers of this protest, but their claims, they are real. The youth unemployment, the high cost of living, like how would people just, they graduate, but they have nowhere to go. They don't know what to do. They are being forced to leave the country and go to the Gulf and work as maids and other odd jobs. But it is just a matter of framing to make it look bad. But in the real sense, it is such that this country can go to a better state in terms of governance.
Marie?
I honestly don't think, and it is very clear that the GNZs are not disorderly. It is actually the government who came to put all that disorder and everything else. You know, the things that we are fighting against are not ideas in our heads. We are fighting for our material conditions. It is our material conditions that made us come out in large numbers to say we want the right to education. How can you be defending education and building a 1.2 church in the State House? Who will be going to that church anyway? So it is what we are fighting for is very, very clear, and we are not in any way disorderly. But I think the difference that might be there between this generation and the older generations that have been there is, for example, if you look at Mau Mau, if power were to fall on the streets that very day, Mau Mau would have taken power. If you would to look at this struggle of the Mwakenya movement, the way they were organizing underground and all that, if power were to fall on the street, they already had institutions that they were organizing themselves among those institutions, so they knew what will take power if anything happens. But now we do not have something that is solidified as GNZ. For example, that is why you see some of them being bought publicly, and they have no shame and all that. But if we had an organization that we have organized ourselves within that organization, and we are saying we go to State House and power falls that very day, we know who is going to be our president, who is going to go where, who is going to go where. So I think the only thing that is lacking as the GNZs is that. But then again, we are also, it's not like we have not been organizing undergroundly to be thinking of such kind of things. We have been thinking of formation of transitional committees that begin from the very lowest level in our communities, from church leaders, from these lawmakers, NGOs, and all that, to have representatives from all these institutions, so that when the time comes, we know that we can be able to take this power. Because for sure, Ruto is asking, if I go, who is going to come next? And he's very confident asking that. Why? Because he knows we are not organized that enough. But then again, that does not mean that we are not looking forward to organizing ourselves enough, and we are still marching to State House.
Thank you. Just maybe in terms of intergenerational conflicts, maybe there is some moral conflicts around ethnicity. like framing the struggle not in terms of ethnicity but in terms of class maybe or material condition and in terms also of religion. It seems that religious leaders are facing some strong opposition by the Gen Z. So for this, it could be compared to the punk movement, like trying to confront old moral views by elders and parents and establishment.
Thank you so much. You're very good. And now the third question is very linked, and we started to address it. We were trying to define the topic what, and now we are entering slowly to the how. So now the third point was about youth, Gen Z, and anarchy, because very often anarchy is presented as disorder and chaos. But please go back to the definition. Anarchy is something which is very much different. Anarchy is order without hierarchy, which is very much different. Anarchy used to stand against any form of domination, men over women, state over individual, and anarchy stand on self-organization. So this is the question now. As we see this movement, we've been told they have no leaders, they are disorganized, and blah, blah, blah. This is the discourse we can hear. Of course, we have other discourse. Can we say that we have some kind of anarchist ideology in that movement? Meaning we have no leaders, there is self-organization. So how do you feel it?
I think there's a beauty of, particularly last year, tribeless, partyless, leaderless. There was a beauty of not having those leaders, because it would be easy to say, okay, so and so is going to negotiate on our behalf. We're going to pay them, and then everything just falls apart. But it was strategic, and I credit young people. I credit those of us who are in the streets for not settling and saying this is going to be a representative and so on and so forth. However, just like Mino said, I think ultimately you'd have to think of not necessarily a hierarchy of chairman, secretary, but a vanguard, people who do the intellectual work of the movement and say, this is our strategy, this is how we're going to do, this is how we're going to handle the transition, and so on and so forth. It makes a lot of sense. But when that vanguard, if someone is compromised and they're asked, so who is your leader? They'll say, no, it's that guy who's a leader. This person will say, that guy is a leader. So you won't know who exactly occupies a pole position as far as decision making, because the decision making is going to be consultative. The vanguard would meet with a larger movement and organize. But I think, of course, as state apparatchiks, state operatives would present the disorder, or rather the chaos that was in the streets. And it's really organized chaos, because we know that from history, goons have always been employed by the state. Even when the university students were doing the demonstrations in the 60s and 70s, they were paid people who are acting as agent provocateurs to give the state machinery reason to come hard down on university students. So it's not something new. In any case, in full glare of the media, of cameras, of videos that were doing the rounds, we saw police move with guns side by side, calmly. So the question of whether or not the disorder is really organized disorder, it's not anarchy as your political leaders would have you believe.
Yeah, so for me, I will call it anarchy light, not anarchy in its purest sense, because there is some element in which this anarchy kind of responds to the need for decentralized decision making. So, for example, if you look at the recent Gen Z movement in Kenya, there has been a way in which different powers, centers of decision making, for example, someone comes with an idea of making AI speak about individuals' incompetence. For example, I saw a circulation of Raila saying how he's been a betrayer all the time. We've also seen some people like the lady who was recently taken to court, who created a tool in which you could send multiple emails to the National Assembly to reject the new amendment of the Constitution to entrench the GAF fund and CDF. We also saw Kibet Bull, who was abducted, who was producing very provocative siluettes and videos. So there's a way in which this disorganized or organized chaos kind of speaks to the innovation. If you have a centralized hierarchy, like how normal political systems are, that kind of order creates uniformity, and uniformity kind of kills creativity. So I like the way in which this anarchy light elevates innovation among the Gen Z, such that if you kill this line of protest, something else emerges. So you keep running after shadows. So the government keeps groping in the dark. They arrest so-and-so. Morara Kebaso today is arrested because of his diary vultures. Someone else comes, Kibet Bull comes. They don't know how, before even they consider or figure out how to deal with Kibet Bull, then again, Agnes emerges with something else. Then now there's another gentleman on TikTok with something else. So it's a very, very good framework, or rather productive platform of dismantling structures of decision making towards a more decentralized system. But I think also, coming back to the geopolitical order and disorder, there's a way in which the Gen Zs try to make systems work. So they're not really advocating for anarchy in its purest sense, the idea of statelessness or dismantling hierarchies, but they want those who hold political authority to kind of account for their time in office. So they want the constitution to be followed. I think you've been hearing of this idea of Article 1, the people shall, the people may. So if you don't follow what the constitution dictates to you, we might withdraw this political power that we gave to you. And if you're holding political power, you need to account for your time in office, right? So there's an element in which this anarchy light speaks to the centralized decision making, but also the idea that you need to conform to the dictates of the new constitution.
Okay, let me mention why this leaderless movement is a good thing for now, because it brings out a positive impact for a long-term effect. Because you see, I've come to realize there's something called the Baba says syndrome, which I realized here in Kenya. Let me speak for Kenya, because back in 2023, when President Ruto was just new in office, Baba called for maandamano. Number one, for election fraud. Nothing new there, but... And then the other thing was also high cost of living, which was just coming up. Bread had just become very costly, from like 50 to 55 shillings. So there was a bit of tension here and there, but it's not much. But people came for protest, and Baba Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister, called for protest twice a week, and people would come. But if you look at it, maybe 80% people came because Baba said, not because there's a problem with elections and observance and the high cost of living. It is because Baba said. So that Baba syndrome needs to stop, because I think we are obsessed with our leaders. No sooner had we finished the elections in 2022, we are still talking about elections in 2027. Connie, what happens in between 2022 and 2027? So it's not about the leader, because we think that there's this leader-savior mentality. There's a leader who's going to come up and save us, but there's no one who's coming to save us. We are up for ourselves. We are the ones who are going to save ourselves, and I think that's what this generation is trying to do. So let's work on strengthening the institutions rather than the leader, because leaders will come and go, but if the institutions are strong enough, then we'll have a long-term effect.
I think you have completely confused me with the word anarchy. Now there is light anarchy. There is anarchy. But okay, I'll go with the flow. I think I want to agree with my comrades. But then again, if you look at the government, they were using the word anarchy to make us look bad. Now that is the other thing. That is the bad thing. Because as I said before, it is our material conditions that brought us out. We knew what we were fighting for, and we won't stop what we are fighting for until the constitution has been implemented. And we are fighting, as my comrade said, we are fighting for the implementation of the constitution. I don't know how is that anarchy, but now that you have confused me with the word, I really believe that, as my comrade has also said, I want to strengthen and say that we need to strengthen the institutions, not the individuals. And now, because we even saw Ruto calling some of the people at State House to go and, I don't know, negotiate for the people who come from absolutely no institutions. They have built nothing on the ground, and we have all these organizations on the ground organizing in the grassroots and all that. So we strengthen the institution, and then now we choose our leaders. As I was talking about the transitional committees, that's what we are working towards. But I really don't think we were anarchy as the government was trying to make it look like, so that, you know, they create the chaos and then they call us anarchists.
That's legal anarchy. No, I just wanted to add that this self-organized movement on the social networks is important, but it's based also on a very real and structured civil society, which comes from the grassroots, the Social Justice Center, Mukuru, Madare, Dandora, etc., to the, I would say, middle-class civil society. And there are linkages, which is quite singular to Kenya, between the civil society at the grassroots and the one who is living in Lavington. And that's very powerful, I think, because every fraction of this civil society has its own knowledge, its own competence, and they are very complementary. So I think it's on this base that this movement has been able to build.
Thank you. You wanted to add something? No? Okay, fine. Thank you. We are on time. We are on time. We still have good 15 minutes and still have 2 questions. So now the first question was about, we already started to address it, about the link between these old claims and that new context. We'd like to ask you, because you mentioned most of these claims are not so new, you know, material conditions, some rights, and they are not so new. And maybe the unprecedented element is the way youth is organized, and we start to present the way they are organized. But we'd like you to develop a bit more about how these old claims have been appropriated by youth. Is it a continuity, which we've heard already? Is it a continuity, or do we have something which is very much different?
Yeah, I remember when I was a young person, when I was properly a youth, now that I'm almost in my 40s, I was part of the team of young university students who are clamoring for the new constitution, and part of the group that was demanding for the opposition stake in political processes. So in 2005, no, towards the 2007 elections, we marched from Kenyatta University, that is 47 kilometers from Nairobi, to Uhuru Park. We were very, very, very young and agitated and very, very much progressive. So much of what the youth or the Gen Zs of our time have been accused of is being ahistorical, is that they don't recognize those who have come before them. So if you read history, you realize that what you're doing is merely putting new wine in old skin. So it's the same things that the likes of James Orengo have been agitating for. I've seen a name that I've been familiar with, Njeri Kabeberi in the civil society, Suba Churchill, all those names, Willie Mutunga, they were fighting for the new constitution, they were fighting for human rights, they were fighting for political reforms, release political prisoners, the same way the Gen Zs have been abducted. So it's the same thing, but with the caveat of, one, you're using new tools. Secondly, you are in a relatively enabling political environment because you have a new constitution that enables public participation. I spoke to someone who is close to Yashpal Gai, one of the architects of the new constitution. How many of you know Yashpal Gai? He's known across East Africa. So Yashpal Gai was very intentional about public participation. He included that, of course, in consultation with the rest of the team, the committee of experts, to the extent that he wanted the public to take ownership of their destiny. But the way in which it has unfolded is not the way in which they thought it could be, because for them they thought it could be the usual town hall meetings, like now we're in a town hall meeting here, we deliberate on maybe a particular issue, but now the young people have taken forward this issue of public participation to ways in which we never imagined. Like if you see TikTok, people are dissecting the new constitution, the finance bill is being dissected, right? So like no way that it had never done, it has never been done before. And the beauty of this public participation is that people derive from Article 1 of the new constitution. The people, all sovereign power, it's no more like a clarion call now for the young people. All sovereign power belongs to the people, and the people shall. It's very, very interesting. And this speaks to the ways in which new tools can be so much empowering to people. To the extent that if you go to court on claims of being disorderly in public, being an anarchist, if there is no valid charge, if there is no provision that you've offended, then there is no way the state will hold you. So we are fighting for the same things, but using new tools of engagement, which are so much empowering than they were years before. In my era, we didn't have X or Twitter or TikTok to mobilize. We could use the word of mouth, which was not so effective. We could call each other. Our phones could be tapped. But now you can call each other on WhatsApp, which is encrypted. You can use Telegram channels. There's another platform that I think I had some colleagues were using. It's a radio, like a radio call. The way police officers use over, and they communicate. So young people are also using these digital tools to mobilize political support, which has never been happening before. So it's about new strategies, but fighting for the same things.
I do believe that it is really a protracted struggle because Mau Mau were there, they did what they did. And even before the Mau Mau were there was likes of Akina Mekatilili Wamenza, and they did what they did. And then the Mwakenya movement came, they did what they did. They were fighting then for multipartyism, which eventually happened. They managed to kick Moi out. They managed to get us the new constitution. I'm very happy to have seen my comrade Jerry Kabeberu, because I know they really fought for this constitution, the one that we have now. The constitution that we are using now to say that we have the right to go to the streets, the constitution that provides us with all these basic human rights. We know we have the right to education, the right to food, the right to what. Then they were also, I think they might not have been fighting for exactly the same things, but because now conditions have really gotten worse. There's no food, there's no land, there's no what, there's really nothing. At least in their ages, we would say they would have things like housing, things like, because I know that the Mwakenya movement mostly was sponsored by its members of the movement. They used to contribute, and that is what used to make the movement kept the movement going. But now with the GNZ, we have nothing to contribute to our movements, but we also have other things like Twitter, the energy too that puts us together in in a larger base. But I think it's a protracted struggle, because even when you look at the strategies they were using, some of the strategies we are still using them, because as I mentioned, I come from a group called Traveling Theatre. Jerry was a member of the 5 Cs, and before the 5 Cs there was the Kameredo People's Theatre, which was with through the Ngoge wa Tiongo, I will marry when I want, and what and what. So I think some of the strategies that they used back then are working now, but conditions have changed, and things are a little bit different. Not a little bit different, things are worse now. So I think because it's a protracted struggle, I think this is the time for full liberation, because I don't know what the next generation will fight for. Everything is gone.
Something else will come.
So I think I think Mino quoted Amilcar Cabral when she said people fight for material things, not just big ideas in their minds. I think every 30 to 40 years, ever since the advent of colonialism, there always is this big event. There's some tumultuous event. So 1890s Nandi resistance, Wayaki Wahinga, 1920s Harithuku, 1950s Mau Mau, 80 to 90 you have the attempted coup, you have the struggle for political pluralism, 2022 to 2025, here we are. I think as far as old claims, I think I'll go back to what Cabral said about material things. I think you can't look at, for example, the struggle for political pluralism without considering the structural adjustment of the early 90s, without considering the inflation that was taking place from the early 80s to the early 90s. You can't look at the drive for constitutional change in 1997 out of the context of economic issues, and the youth were particularly insistent on comprehensive reforms, while the older guard was more on minimum reforms. The youth wanted free education and so on and so forth. Right now, in as much as some of us are talking about implement the constitution, you also can't look at that out of the context of it was a bill last year that was threatening people's livelihoods and people responded to it. So I think that it's a continuum of struggle for material benefits. It goes even back, Anake Aforte, the youth of 1940s, who did not have land because agriculture had been increasingly mechanized in the 1940s, and therefore these now become the people who are the fighters in the Mau Mau. So politically, as far as strategy is concerned, yes, there are little bit changes of claim, but economically, it still remains a struggle for material things, for living in dignity, for getting the basics, surviving, for one to get a child and say he has a promising future, given that I can earn, I can get by in this system that I'm living in. Thank you.
Very shortly, I think, of course, because the struggle has been very long, protracted, and there were some gains, which is not the case in every country. I mean, the constitution was a gain, the new constitution is a gain in terms of freedom and freedom of speech. And so now the claims are moving more to social justice, maybe, than it was before. The fact that civil society from the ground is at the forefront and not only lawyers and academics. Maybe the fact that the last year protest was triggered by a financial bill is quite important and quite relevant in terms of how do you link taxes and democracy. So I think there is some novelty in this movement about social justice, redistribution, even if accountability and rights are still relevant claims, especially now in this context.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are very more than good. Eh? We are very much on time. We have to keep time. We have one last question, so we will respect our promises to finish at 11:15. I've been told we have some rights here. We have the right to take tea after the address. The last question. So be prepared because we have to save time. Eh? They will discuss the last question. Then everybody has the right or the opportunity to take tea, and immediately we start for 15 minutes question and answer from you. Is that okay? Okay, so now the last question. It's about integrity and legacy of youth and Gen Z movement. And by the way, I think it's not my question, but she will recognize. It's in the presentation of the panel. Youth movement, how can it preserve its strengths and originality in the face of ongoing repression? So this is a real question of political science angle.
I think structures, well, not structures in the political party sense, secretary general, party leader, and so on and so forth. But there has to be some sort of, when you're thinking of handing over, when you're thinking about a legacy, and that's, I guess, one of the issues I have when people call it a Gen Z protest. Mino was part of a group in 2020 and 2021 and 2022 that was part of a Saba Saba agitation campaign. Every July 7th, Mino and RSL, they were always on the streets. And then so when you say, yeah, she deserves the credit, I'll give him a coffee bana. Nini? Yeah. And of course, there are those who are before them. But now I think you have to think of structures in the sense that, okay, if those who are here who are actively involved politically, I'm always asked that question when I'm at, or rather when I was beginning to get into activism and so on, people would ask me, are you a member of a progressive political organization? And then I wasn't. But if you are, then you have a structure at least that can capture people who are young. I'm using capture in a very liberal way though. That can get people who are younger, who are in high school and so on, and that can transition. So I think there is a need for young people to come up with progressive movements, be it in the on a neighborhood basis, be it on, a county basis, but there's a need for people to be in a politically progressive movement and then channel their activism through that, which could now allow them to hand over to people who, the Generation Alpha, I think that's what they're called, the ones who are hyper globalized. So that kind of structure ought to be there to ensure the handover, the legacy of Gen Z, millennial, and so on and so forth, for it to go on in perpetuity. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this question has been asked several times. Whenever Gen Z revolutions or the moment comes, like the last 25th June 2024 revolution. So the question that normally comes is, and one of my friends who is in ODM proper was really questioning our next step. So he asked, okay, once you guys occupy Parliament and State House, so what? Then he comes with this answer that in such circumstances, and he gives the examples of the Arab Spring, Egypt, Sudan, Tunisia, which also had very, very successful youth movements. Then he comes in with this answer that organized political movements, like my ODM party, will come and take opportunities that you've created to organize politically and assume political power. And long before the ink dried from his lips, ODM was in an agreement with Kenya Kwanza regime to stabilize the status quo. So unless the Gen Zs or the youth movements or the young people's revolution organize politically, then it will just be anarchy, as we said before. Because in the absence of political power, which should be the ultimate aim of such a movement, and I'm borrowing from the experiences of the Bolshevik revolutions, unless a revolutionary guard is established, that there is nobody to be a vanguard of that revolution. So the thinking should be, how does this collective anger and strategy crystallize into an organized political movement that can actually take political power and then implement all these ideas that we are beautifully curating online and offline. Until that happens, it is the same Gashaguas, the political cousins, as he calls himself, and the Kalonzos and the Matiangis, who've been all accused of all the violations that we are trying to dismantle. So they'll organize politically, and some of the Gen Zs, once they see the possibilities of these formations forming political power, they'll fall back into their ethnic cocoons. Like already we are seeing some of the Luo politicians have already alienated the Luo Gen Zs into the ODM fold. The same way we can see Mount Kenya elites will likely to bring on board the Mount Kenya Gen Zs into their fold, because there is nobody who goes into the election and votes for a candidate whom he thinks is likely to lose. So if our systems don't really crystallize into a structure that is organized politically, we are likely to fall into our ethnic cocoons and then stabilize the status quo. Yeah, so the question is, how do we transition to the next level of organized politics?
Okay. My comrades who know these slogans, please shout. Organize, organize.
Organize to take political power.
Yes, we usually say that. Organize, organize, organize to take political power, because we are actually organizing to take political power. And we believe that as a comrade, I know there are activists who like working alone, but we believe that, we believe that as activists, you cannot function in a vacuum, like alone, be a one army soldier working alone. So we believe in the coming together in unity and forming something that is going to work for all of us. And it is not just organize to take, we are not just organizing, we are organizing to take political power. What does that mean? In these our small institutions, we have been here, I've been here for a long time, as my comrade has said, and we have formed all these social justice movements in almost every other informal settlement. And what do we do in this informal settlement? We do civic education, but we also do political education, because as Sankara says, a soldier without political education is a potential criminal. So we are educating our people on what is the way forward, and we also like come together and discuss what are the best structures for all of us, so that when we are taking power, when we are coming together to unite all these organizations, we know where we are going, and we are very clear, and our comrades are also politically conscious, so that when we are going to State House, it's not my comrade who is shooting me on the back. You know why they have the capacity to also organize these goons is because they know that young people do not have the political education. Yes, so I think we are organizing towards political power and towards a vanguard.
And maybe just to add on the issue of integrity, the system since the colonial period has been rigged. It's not so easy to start again from a point of having a high sense of integrity, because you think that you will be that leader who has integrity until you get there. So this happens even in society. In society, recently I went to do a driving exam, and then things happened, and things had to happen. So you realize it is much deeper than you think, and we have to go back to our roots and try to look at the root causes. Otherwise, trying to give painkillers to just suppress rather than look at the root causes, then having integrity is going to be difficult.
Asante. 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 Wewe, asanteni. We have reached our objective. We keep time, so I suggest we can clap for all of them, please. And as today we have been invited by FIDEMO. You know, in FIDEMO there is innovation. We are going to innovate now, because our objective is to have still some time for discussions and to take tea. So we'll do this in the same time. Now I invite people who would like to get tea to go for tea, and I'm also inviting people who would like to ask questions I assume we are responsible enough to manage it. Is that okay? Yeah. So the invitation for tea is done, and the invitation for question is done, and we have no more than 15 minutes. Is that okay? So yes, one question, 2, and 3. We start with these 3 sets of questions, please. And you need a microphone. I can see people are more interested in questions than tea. Good.
Thank you. I want to add my definition to the question of the definition of Gen Z. For me, it is not matter of age. It's like feminism. I can ask who is feminism here. Men, I think some men will raise their hands. So Gen Z is related to a concept more than age grouping or someone who is using TikTok or these kind of things. This is number 1. Number 2, I miss the generation dialogue. I would love if someone from elder people who is Gen Z and here to add concepts and perspective of his or her ideas about Gen Z. I have a question for you. Is it a movement? Is it a political movement or a social movement or both? And is some of you related or part of the political parties? Are you Gen Z, the political parties itself, making this movement within the political parties? Is it organized or ad hoc? If assume the government now agree to do the things that you are demanding, creating jobs, making life paradise, everything. Are you going to stop?
Maybe.
No. Final point is about do you have any connection with the Gen Z within the region, within the West? I can see Gen Z in the States who are demonstrating for Gaza, for instance. So thank you. Over to you.
Okay, we take the three questions before you answer. There was a question. Was there? Oh, but I give the way to somebody here and somebody here. This is not anarchy, I'm telling you. We are organized.
Viva, comrades, viva. Viva, comrades, viva. Talk like you have the energy. Viva, comrades, viva. Viva, comrades, viva. More power to organizing, more power. I'm a Gen Z, so the energy is mutual. So my question is kind of hard, and also the current state that we are in now. Now that the finance bill has been passed, despite being rejected massively, and they are also being restricted in our social media pages and also being monitored, which has already started. Now, how do we guarantee our freedom of expression, or how do we ensure that our freedom of expression is not infringed by the government?
Thank you. That was a question, very brief, very precise. And that gentleman from Gen Z.
Thank you. My name is Jacob Emoit, an upcoming Gen Z lawyer. My question is, you've said that we are organizing to take actual political power, and that should be the goal, because if we continue to talk and we don't get into those positions of influence, it means there is no actual change that we're actually making. So my question to our panelists then is, how do we rise above the challenge of resources? How do we confront the challenge of resources as young people? Because we will need financial resources to take actual political power. Thank you.
Thank you. So now, please, if you are invited to start to answer this question, to address the comments, who would like to start? Who's comfortable with? Yeah.
So, Gen Z as Gen Zote. I think you've heard, some people have called Gen Z Gen Zote, which means all generations, Zote Kiswahili. And the question of generational dialogue. I think that's why joining a politically progressive movement is fundamental to facilitate these dialogues between different generations. Those who would form that movement at some point in time will have to exit stage for people who are more active. And I think as far as, just maybe to push back on the idea of anyone can be youth and so on and so forth, I think the actual how would I say, there are actual political issues that would make a youth more invested than an older person. In the sense, I recall when I was in university and Vision 2030 had just come out, and I remember my lecturer, Dr. Ombongi, would say, Vision 2030 will be a vision in 2030. Will still be a vision in 2030. I remember he was telling us, you young people should be more invested in this than I am. And he was very disappointed that many of us had not read the document. And he said, look, I am 40 plus or something. I'm not going to enjoy Vision 2030 like you. So you have more time on earth than I do. So you should be politically invested more than I am. So indeed, there should be a question of thinking beyond generations, but there's also the actual reality that younger people have longer to live in this world and therefore should be more invested. And I guess you could say that that's the reason why a number of them are more radical when they're younger. I think all social movements are political because I think they spring from political problems. Social movements spring from political problems, and that therefore means that any social movement is a political movement. It may not be political in the mainstream sense of it. It may not be part of, it might divest from engaging in mainstream politics, but as far as they're organizing their community, they are still political in that sense. I happen to be part of the Kombozi Library, and we encourage dialogues between leftist movements, and I think Mino also, someone who we also work with from time to time, will also tell you that we have an understanding with our comrades in Tanzania. We have let's say a big relationship with them, and we started. For me, I mean, I started working with them from 2016. So definitely, as far as the region is concerned, our aim is very Pan-Africanist in that sense. But I definitely agree that there is a need for internationalism, a need for global solidarity, and so on and so forth. How do we guarantee freedom of expression or freedom after expression? Well, that would be a legal question. Definitely, we have to. I mean, if bills are passed through parliament that are unconstitutional, they have to be challenged. But I think also beyond the legality and the constitutionalism of it, I think there's also a need to learn from previous movements that we have had. The Mwa Kenya that would have cells that would say, oh, this is a cell along Valley Road, that is a cell along Gong Road, and these cells don't necessarily have to meet each other, but they have activities running concurrently. So how do we rise above the challenges of resources? Self-reliance is definitely a challenge for many social movements, but I think pulling resources, when you have a social movement that has a number of people who are there, then they can pull resources, they can contribute whatever money they have to rise above that challenge, or at least deal with it, to come up with whatever meager resources that they can use for their organizing. Thank you.
So the question about is it a social movement or a political movement? We have a social movement which is called the Social Justice Centers movement, which now includes all these centers in the informal settlements. But we also have a vanguard, a political vanguard. That is, I personally come from RSL, but it is not just one. There are many. There are comrades who come from Kongamano la Mapinduzi, other political parties, doing different organizing in our communities, in our informal settlements, conducting these political educations, also trying to organize the casual laborers. These are the Akina Mamambogas, Akina the Dobi women. So we have a social movement, and we have a vanguard of political, political what? What is the name? Yeah, political parties. Yeah, political parties. What we have not managed to do is just consolidate our energies and be able to come up with one political party that is going to take over, and that is what we are trying our best to do. But however, we work hand in hand. They are our comrades, and we work together. And the question on what guarantees our freedom of expression. So comrades, we understand that freedom never comes for free, and we will have to keep fighting for this. And it is our mandate as the people who are conscious to keep educating the masses that this freedom will never come for free. Unajua, Ruto anatuua kidogo, the next maandamano, people are not as many as they were, but okay, I'm not saying that we should die. Of course, we should not die. But we all understand, even from the times of Akina Mau Mau and Hot and What, freedom has never been for free. And power is not given. Power is taken. So it is for us to keep pushing the masses and have as many people as we can on the ground and be able to, push to take this political power. And the government will try as much as it can to suppress our freedom of expression. But we cannot give up. Giving up, we say, is equal to death. We have to keep fighting. And the question on how we can get enough resources, comrade, I think now this is where you also come in. Hello? Yeah, the upcoming Gen Z lawyer. This is where we all consolidate our energies and ask ourselves, where are we getting these resources to be able to do this work? But then again, we are also trying our best to talk to the progressive NGOs that are around us, that are within us. There are some that have been supporting us to do, for example, things like People's Assembly. I'm happy to see you, comrade, that have been supporting us to do things like People Assembly, conscientizing the masses, and continuing to mobilize more people on the streets. But the question of resources is a difficult one.
Let me just add on the question of resources. I think I would pose back the question to the citizens. We have now come to a place where we are calling ourselves Gen Zs, this Gen X, and this, but in all the same, we all have the same agenda. Now, because the Gen Zs are now the frontiers of this movement, it is, what about the rest of the population? This is where you can come in and actually offer mentorships, because they are willing to go out there, they are willing to be organized, but the challenges may be the resources and what have you. But the rest of the population, especially those who are more expertise and they see that this thing is going to bring a good effect, can offer mentorship programs, and in a way of where you're mentoring them, knowing how the system is, knowing how they can get better impact with this movement, and on if there's any connection with other Gen Zs regionally. I would say, again, it is a matter of social media and being digitally literate and being fluent, such that Gen Zs are vocal people and they want to speak up about it. Might not be politics in other country, could be climate change, could be the issue of LGBTQ+, but it is all about being vocal. There's this quote that I saw in a certain book I was reading that says that in Africa, but could be not be Africa, could be the rest of the world of any, in Africa, silence means consent. So if you're silent about something, somebody else is taking that you are okay with it and you can continue with it. So it is by no means must we be silent if you're not okay about anything.
Yeah, and finally, one question that was asked, that if the demands that the Gen Zs have are met, will this agitation stop? So let me throw this back to the Gen Zs in the room. Do you think it will stop? Will the movement stop? I think the ship has sailed because enough blood has been spilled. I think you've been seeing that. And the generation that we have now can never forget and move on like previous generations have done before. So there's an element in which selective amnesia has been overcome by demands for justice continually. And on the question of this dialogue between generations, I think in the early days, I really missed these moments when we had X spaces as public squares in which over 200 participants could converge in the evenings and just discuss issues, for example, the finance bill, articles of the Constitution. And there was some element of inviting all the people like Kivota Kibwana, who have been in the game for a long time, Willie Mutunga, just speaking to the people, and the young people could learn lessons from them. It was very decentralized again. There were multiples of them. The media tried to organize their own, the traditional media, of course, KTN and Citizen. They used to also organize their own public squares, but the Gen Zs, the organic movements that were rising at that moment in time were very much well attended, and I think we've missed that element of connecting in the evenings in public squares and speaking about issues. So I think it's high time that we go back into those forums that we had dialogues across generations. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I've been told that we are late, and so we missed that objective. So we have to close that session. So please clap for the very relevant discussion. We are very much happy.